Hello everyone, I welcome you for the next video. I'm here again with Judith, and today we're gonna talk about how does the United States change over the decades.
Okay.
You said you've been born in 1945.
I was born
right?
in 1945.
Okay.
In those years, as a young child, America was top. It had helped win Second World War. We were loved by everybody in the world, it seemed, and it seemed like we did the right thing. It seemed like the choices that were made were for altruistic reasons. We were strong. I mean, it was like, it was the golden time, I think, of America.
It was the time when America, because of the World War II, they started a lot of businesses, a lot of factories. People had the money because they had to work.
Yes.
So the America really kicked off from that.
Yes.
So
and the women had been working because when the men went to war,
yes.
they had to start to work in the factories or in the things for war. But then there was a freedom starting for American women that young in 1945, 50s. Then I don't know much about the Korean War. I was too little to know about it. Yeah. But I think it was a happy, things seemed safer. You could walk to school a few blocks by yourself. People weren't worried that you would get kidnapped. It was a quieter time. I'm from the Midwest. I'm from a suburb in Chicago. The Midwest is much more tranquil and maybe old-fashioned than either the East Coast or the West Coast. It's a much more settled place. People are kind of down to earth. So I remember being as a child, we weren't afraid of too much. It was a Cold War as I got a little bit older with Russia. Yeah. And so some people had to have like shelters in their house in case we got bombed. But my parents didn't talk a lot about politics, so I wasn't really afraid about any of that. I think that we were kids, and it was an easy life. I didn't realize I was poor because everybody kind of was, or lower middle class because everybody was the same. But it was a kind of a golden era, and my brother it was just my brother and myself. He's younger than I am, 4 years younger, and we were living in a little house. It was our own little. It was a tiny house until I was in first grade, and then my father. We moved only 3 miles. That's right. My parents are not travelers. We moved 3 miles away to the town over, and built a house that was in a new neighborhood. Again. Most people around us were Czech, maybe some Polish people, and it was
basically like a white community.
Yes,
if you call
it wasn't segregated or anything. I mean, I never even saw any people of color in high school. I think I was in college, and not much even then, just because of where I went to school. It was segregated in the north, maybe not by law, but black people lived in one area, or Hispanic people, and it wasn't mixed then, but it was kind of quiet. I was a little bit young for in the 60s, the marches, down in the South about segregation and ending segregation. I was in Europe for my junior year abroad, so I wasn't so much involved in that. But I think the first time I was aware of any kind of war problem is with Kennedy and Cuba. And Russia, and
early
having
60s.
having the rocket, but
Cuban crisis.
But when I went to Europe for the junior year abroad, that's when we were heavy in the Vietnam War, and before then, if you were poor, most of us believed we had to be in the Vietnam War, that we were doing a good thing because we were very anti-communist. So that was anti-communism, and there was the whole idea about the domino theory, that if Vietnam goes communist, then Cambodia is going to be communist, and then the other, Thailand, and it's going to be spreading. And I didn't really know too much about it. I was naive. I had never been out of the country, and I was a naive girl. Then I went to Europe, and I was at a university of Freiburg where there were Americans, there were all kinds of Europeans, there were Germans, there were a lot of Asians, there was a Russian institute there, and there were people who I ended up wanting to only visit, being with foreign people, because then I started getting interested in other countries. There were Israelis there, and I remember being with someone from Africa, or an island off of Africa, who told me that he was communist, and I thought, oh, he doesn't look like a devil, but he's communist. And he started talking, and we got to be friends. And then I started doing some reading, and they said, you don't even understand how wrong the Vietnam War is. It's a civil war. What are you guys doing there? And I was ignorant. Also, the Afghans, the Russians were in Afghan, and the foreigners would come up to us because we were American and you can get guns so easily. And they asked us, can you help us get guns? Because we're doing an underground war in Afghanistan. There were people from all over the world there. But I was really, my eyes were open for the first time, and I started doing much more reading, and soon I was avidly anti-war, the Vietnam War, and it started happening. More and more people were young people in the 60s, and in the 60s, now it's a little bit more like the 60s. A lot of people are protesting about racism and what's happening here, and groups of people are marching. So in the 60s, it was mostly to try to get the Vietnam War to be ended.
How would you compare 50s to 60s? Was it like
well,
calmer?
I wasn't I wasn't that interested politically. I was probably
Not
naive.
even politically, like more like about the life. Do you
Well,
feel
I
like
think the 60s were, of course, much more turbulent. We were involved in the Vietnam War. America was. It started with civil rights. There was some civil rights going on. There were some protests. Wish I had been more attuned to that, but yes. So a lot was going on in the 60s, and I think that generation of college students, mostly college, were much more active and concerned. And I think the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, I think even the 2010, they were more interested in America, by and large, with making money, nice clothes, doing things with nice cars. I mean, mostly you would talk to people and they wanted a certain kind of job so they can make a lot of money. And I really feel like there's a lot of selfishness in those other years. Now, maybe I'm prejudiced, but I think the 60s are closer to what has been happening in the last month or two in America, where you've got many people who are protesting and writing and wanting to change and talking about problems. And they should be, because I think the country, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, you know, with the yuppies and making a lot of money on Wall Street, I think this country has turned away from rights and individual rights and concerns, and it's so divided now. We're not really unified at all, and our current unnamed president, I don't want to even use his name, has only made it worse and put us in two camps, and is causing, it's every day there's something worse, and I hope that he is not going to be elected again. But I'm not proud of this country anymore. I'm not, and that people my age or even younger than I am are I mean, especially in California or places like this, who are more, let's say, they don't just listen to Fox News. I mean, I don't know how political I can be or not be, but
totally, however we want.
I think that
Free speech.
I've never lived all these years with what is happening and the kinds of, it's like a dictatorship, and the Constitution is being ignored. There's only one part of our government, the three branches that we have, executive, the Congress, and the Supreme Court is the only one that kind of is functioning. And they have come out with a couple decisions that I know the president is upset about, but thank God. I'm not proud to be an American. I don't even want anyone to know I'm an American when I travel, because it's hideous. And he's got about a 4th grade education, 4th grade English, and it's all about himself and about ego, and not wearing a mask and pretending that it's all going to go away, and marginalizing anybody who is a health provider. And it only gets worse. I can't really watch the news every single day because of it, but it's shocking. And having had Obama, who could have maybe done a little bit more, but that was a proud moment. I think it's like going down from the 60s, but then we had Obama, and we had the first black president, and we had someone who was respected by the rest of the world, who had a heart, who was eloquent, who, when he spoke, he tried to have people come together. And then we have someone who is just trying to do the opposite, and only for his own
Yeah, that's why I'm
purposes.
asking you, and that's why you can say whatever you want, because I want you.
I'm very up. I mean, he is undermining rights that we have had in this country for years and years, for what the founding fathers.
Do you know the nickname for helicopter from LAPD?
No.
It's called Ghetto Bird.
Ghetto bird?
Ghetto Bird, because it circles the ghetto all the time.
Well, I could go on and on and on
Yeah,
about
I got
how
it.
we're losing our freedoms, and he's quietly doing some of it, where you find out, and how he's handled the virus, the lies, it's very depressing. There are a lot of people, not only my age, who there's an underlying depression. Forget about the COVID right now, in what is happening to this country. And you know, where can you go? I'm not going to go move to Canada at this point in my life,
That's kinda late, yeah.
the Czech Republic. But,
maybe we would have a good retirement in Czech. You never know.
well, I'd have to have a boyfriend in Czech Republic
Guys,
to go with, or something.
lined up, lined up.
So funny. I think many of us are embarrassed and don't almost know what to do. What I like right now is, do you know about the Lincoln Project? Do you know
Lincoln
what that is?
Project?
The Lincoln Project. It's a group of Republicans, I say, who hate Trump, and they're going to vote for Biden, and they're smart, and they don't care. And you go on YouTube and go, the Lincoln Project, and they have on YouTube mostly, but they put together maybe 30 seconds, 20-second slot about Trump. Horrible stuff about, look, he can't even walk, he can't talk, and they are sharper. The Democrats are too kind, too sweet. They're afraid to do something. But that group of Republicans, if you don't know about the Lincoln Project, it's one little ray of hope in what's going on here, is that group. But the Republicans are trying to make it difficult to vote by mail in certain states. They're going to make it harder for people of color. If they're tricky, and all they care about is being in power again. And I hope they don't win. But Obama, it's such a shame, because so many things that he did, his Obamacare, we have a problem with medical problems. We've always had it here. Hillary Clinton tried to fix it. Clinton, when he was president, tried to. Obama did something. It's not as good as Europe, but Trump is just trying to undo everything that President Obama did, which is,
Yeah, that's why I want to talk to you and like let you speak without any interrupting you, because I want to hear your opinion. It doesn't mean that I agree with everything, but the thing is, like, I want you to like express your feelings and compare the decades. So if there would be one certain decade which you would like to go back and live through the decade again, which one it would be?
whoa, I have to say this.
And it's not only like that, oh, I was younger, so I want to experience
No,
that. It's
I mean,
not
the
only about it.
60s, everybody seemed to be they cared. Maybe I was young, so it seemed like that. But in the 60s, there was hope. And you had a president who was a leader who said, don't ask what your country can do for you,
Kennedy.
ask what you can do for your country. We had the civil rights movement. It didn't go as far or what it should have done, but you had Martin Luther King, you had Malcolm X, you had some really important and great music, I have to say also.
Which one?
Oh, the Stones, the Beatles.
So you've been the fan, the crazy Beatle fan, like standing under
I
the
think
stage?
even the Stones or
Yeah,
Led
yeah,
Zeppelin. I mean, you had, I think that there was a hope, and yes, a little craziness. People didn't have to all fit into a box, but that might, I could be
So
wrong,
it would be
but
60s then?
I think the 60s, I think the 70s became piped in music and discos and dancing, and I don't, you know, you can generalize everything, okay?
Because
the
I kinda...
80s, I don't know, the 80s, I was working hard, and so I guess it was, I had interesting jobs. The sad thing about now also, I would say, is when I got, because you talked about whether your generation, the children up until maybe 10 years ago, usually children did better than their parents. Even if their parents were educated, they would be able to start with more money being a doctor or a lawyer or having their own business or being a teacher. And I think that what is happening in the last 10 years with the economy, even before, again, the COVID, it's harder to find jobs. There aren't as many jobs. When I got out of school, everybody could get some kind of job. Even for the next 20 years, generally you would be able to find a job without a problem. But now you've got parents that the children will never make as much money as the parents.
Even for the same job, let's say. Could you make more money as a teacher in 60s?
For the same job, I don't think so. I've been a teacher as well. I started right out of college. I was a teacher in a Catholic school in Washington, D.C., and I taught French in high school. I also taught in Houston, Texas, 6th grade, in between having a child and also being a lawyer, but mostly I was a lawyer. I don't know how much money my daughter makes, but she probably makes a decent amount for being a first grade teacher, and she'll be okay, especially because she'll live. You know, she's not going to go to Europe 5 times a year or something, or eat at expensive restaurants all the time. But and I was able to do some of that. Not that it's that great, but I went to Europe a couple times a year, many parts of my life.
So compared to like how much you make versus your living expenses in 60s, it was better than it is right now. That's what you're trying to say, even for the same job as a teacher.
I think so. You know, I don't know, because I was single. And then
it's also different, yes.
My daughter is different. She's much more her own person. She's much more grounded and concerned with more important things than, you know, not that she doesn't love pretty clothes and things, but she's certainly not like the majority, I would say, of superficial American girls. And I kind of think as the years have gone on that's the values are more material than they were in the 60s. Maybe in the 80s, I don't know when it became the most important thing is to
make money.
Buy clothes, make money, and other things are less important. And these people during COVID are a lot more, I mean, they may be more bored because they can't do shopping and things like that, but I have a feeling that the values have gotten too materialistic in America, and I can see it. I mean, it's like, friends' children or maybe some distant relatives, they're not interested so much in politics. Maybe now we're getting some that are, but up until the last couple years, most of the American families, I think the kids are more interested in, you know, getting a good job, getting into a good college, having a nice car, which is sad to me because I wish it were not like that. I don't want to say anything about that, but I think that eventually that's not going to make people happy. They're bored, and that's part of the shopping thing. A lot of people are bored in America. I think. The protests, I hope, are permanent, and I hope this country finally does something about the racist, horrible roots that are here and takes real action and doesn't like do something for a while and then it's quiet. Do something. It gets a little bit better, maybe, a little bit better, but I'm white, so it's not, I don't know how that must feel to be a little bit better. That's not good enough. So.
How does Los Angeles change over the time?
Oh, it's changed a lot too. I've been here, we talked before, I've lived here several different times in my life. I lived pretty much after college for a short period of time.
How was it back then?
It wasn't as crowded. There wasn't a lot of traffic. It was quieter. People didn't complain as much. It wasn't as polluted. And I lived in a very east part, not in like, this is a very nice part. I
lived in East Los.
I lived in Arcadia, which is
East LA, like that way.
There were peacocks walking around, and I was only here for like 4 or 5 months, so.
Back then, even when you were here for a short period of time, have you seen like Hollywood Boulevard or something like that at the time?
Yeah, it wasn't as crowded. I mean, it wasn't as sleazy. It wasn't as anything. It was much nicer.
Was it as dirty as it is right now? Drugs everywhere, homeless people everywhere?
No. I don't even remember seeing homeless people. I don't know that I would have even seen them.
How racially different was it compared to right now? Was it that Hispanic back then? Was it a black part of city? Was it Mexican part of the city? White part of the city?
It still almost is, you know. It's still pretty much. I mean, there are
back then. Now it's
think
completely like segregated, completely.
Yeah,
South Central, like East Los,
well,
that's
in
completely.
Arcadia, there were mostly just white people that I remember. Now there's a lot of Asians and Chinese kind of in that area.
Yes, yes, definitely.
I unfortunately, Los Angeles isn't segregated. There are sections where my daughter teaches. There are some mixtures, but this is not mostly. But there are some black families here, but mostly not.
This is white neighborhood, pretty much.
Yeah, it is, but there are some black.
Yeah.
A couple, two houses down
Yeah.
there. But
So my question is, for example, like Hollywood nowadays, all Russian. If you go everywhere, like certain central LA, just Afro-American, and the area is twice bigger than Prague, South Central. Then you go East Los, as you said, Asians.
I don't know that
So
it was
it-
any different when I was there.
So it wasn't like that back then.
I think it was, but I didn't know it.
Oh,
I
you
mean, I
haven't-
didn't go in those areas as much that I can remember. When I moved back the second time, when it was years later, and again I've only lived here. I lived in Santa Monica. I lived in West Hollywood, up in the hills. So those areas, that might be up in West Hollywood in the hills, might be a little, there might be slightly mixed, but still mostly not.
How about downtown? Have you ever go to downtown?
I used to go a lot to the opera and all these great things and ballets and.
How did you like it then?
If
you compare it to nowadays downtown.
I think I went downtown for create artistic things. I would go down for the opera,
Art district,
for the ballet. I would go down for that. And some of my extended family lives in some of their Japanese background, live in the high rises down there. I like downtown, but that for me was going down to some cultural event or museums.
So back then it was nice.
Well, it's still nice if you go to the opera.
Yeah, that's the upper.
But I mean, living
upper east
there,
side.
yeah.
Upper west side. Yeah.
I'm
You mentioned the
naive.
traffic.
I mean, I wish I had more. I wish I were more involved with other groups. But, for example, with people of color, I have law school. There were one or two people in my law school. And then when I was teaching.
Why you think it was that?
Because it was a long time ago, for one thing. It was Georgetown for another thing. Now I think probably there are many more. They probably didn't let some of them in, for one reason, because it's a racist. It has been very bad here about that. I worked at many studios. I worked at MGM. I worked at Disney. I worked at places like that.
As
and
a
I
lawyer.
can count as a lawyer. And there were a couple black people, a couple maybe of color, maybe an Hispanic, but few, very few. And I blame mostly it's the companies, probably. And teaching at EC for the last 3 or 4 years, the head director was black, and she's my friend, but she was there was another 1 or 2 teachers who were black. There were a couple Hispanic teachers, but I haven't in my career come into a lot of contact with either living near people who are not white or being in clubs. I'm in a book club now where I am, which I have to thank Nicole, who is my boss at EC, who said, yeah, we have protests, we have all these things, but how do you get to know someone from another culture? It's to know them as a person. You're doing something else together. You're working together. You live next door. So she started 2 years ago and asked me if I wanted to be in it, a book club where she only reads African American or American Ghanaian writers, women, fiction and nonfiction. And she wanted different groups. So I was for a little while the only white person in there, by far the oldest, because they're more like my daughter's age in their 30s. But there's a half black, half Muslim girl in it, and that's great because that's a different perspective. And now one of my friends who's a white lawyer, prosecutor, she decided to come in it. So this is the kind of thing that I think is going to make changes. And hopefully we try to talk as honestly as we can about some of these issues in the country. But that's what's needed. I mean, protests and yes, all of that, but in a natural way, we've got to live
Do you think that your opinion would change if you would live somewhere close to South Central and you would see drive-by shooting every day?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't want to be there because of safety.
That's what I'm saying. Do you think it would also change some of your opinions? If you
Well, there are lots of groups of different kinds of, I mean,
that's what I'm saying, because if you live, let's say, in Pacific Palisade, in that like an area, and then there is you would meet, for example, like people who live closer to area which is more danger. Those people would
they are
be
poorer people.
That's what I'm
all.
that's what I'm
and
saying.
And the police aren't always there. And I'm not saying that
because, for
you
example,
should
like,
take someone who is, I mean, I can say uneducated, angry, has nothing, desperate, has been trounced upon, has slavery in his family, like most all black people who are here, go back with that heavy burden, and have maybe had horrible things happen to that person. I'm not saying they ought to be able to shoot people and do those things.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about,
but
like,
obviously, if I'm the one white person at this age in the middle of South Central and I see somebody, gangs fighting with each other, I'm not going to go there.
I cannot even imagine. No, I was not even talking about it. I was more talking about, okay, you live in Culver City in Ladera Heights, which is like Beverly Hills of Culver City, like pretty rich neighborhood.
Yeah.
But very close, like a couple blocks from there, there's Inglewood, and there the area is pretty like, you know, it's not that friendly. And in Ladera Heights, you have
Inglewood's not so bad anymore.
Yeah, it's not that bad, but it used to be. And let's say, like, because I live in Ladera Heights, like a couple months, and when you talk to people, it's rich black neighborhood, and they will tell you that they are here, that this is Ladera Heights, and they don't want to live over there
because it's safer.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So do you think that even like the way your own experience would change your opinions, and even if the same people of same color live over there, but it's dangerous of them because they make it dangerous there, you don't want to live there even when you are part of
I don't want to live with any group of people where people have guns everywhere and you're afraid to walk out. But this country has many ways caused a lot of that problem. But I'm not, I mean, you can't pick up a newspaper in the last 2 months, or a magazine, not the New Yorker, not anything that doesn't have 5 articles written by 5 black people and 4 white people about how we're going to handle this and what to do about it. It certainly starts with education. It certainly starts, as my daughter talks about, first grade, where you've got a little white boy, you've got a Chinese boy, there's a kid, he's half Moldavian and half from Venezuela, and they play together, and they find out that just because he's poor and he's got brown skin or black skin or white skin, but you can do things together, and they aren't so angry. I mean, some of her students, she said, they were angry right away they just wanted to cause problems for someone because of what happened at home with them. But that core really group that I would be, of course I'm not going to go walk down in some of those areas. I don't know, it's got to start way down here. It's very hard, I think, to make friends when you're 30 or 35 or 40 because you've been brought up. I just read an article, they said it's caste. It's as much caste as race, where you expect that person couldn't possibly run a company because she's black and she's young, and it's not maybe racist so much as it's a caste thing that you put people in different groups. And we're all, anybody older than, I guess 10 years old has a point of view about that. Especially, so it's got to start young.
What helped me personally to get in touch with people from other like ethnicities and stuff like that was training jiu-jitsu, because once I start training, I pretty much got access to other friends who don't even have English as a first language. So there's a lot of people from Mexico that I know, a lot of people from everywhere else. Yeah, there's a lot of like Spanish speakers, even like from South America, Argentina and stuff like that. So Cuba, I got like a lot of friends from there. They've been maybe born here, but they're different. And that also changed like a lot of my opinions, because if I think of that nowadays, I have more close friends who don't have their first language, either English or Czech.
That's interesting.
And that's very like pretty unique, because normally you would even get into those groups and stuff like that. As exactly as you mentioned, my friend invited me for his birthday. It was all Mexican birthday. They have the live band and stuff. I was there the only one white, and they look at me like, who is this white guy, you know? And then he introduced me, you know. It was great. So I got a lot
Michal,
of.
that's wonderful.
So I got a lot of my friends are not even English speakers or Czech speakers, like as a first language,
Well,
which is crazy.
You've got a great experience.
So I
here.
got to experience like a lot. But there's one last thing I want to talk with you, and I think.
May I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How many friends are black? How many?
A lot.
A lot. Okay.
A lot.
And you know them because you're.
Oh, jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
Yeah, mostly because of
And
that.
are they of a group where you would be afraid to go where they live, or are they?
Oh yeah, they definitely don't live in the hood. Like yeah, they are out of hood. Like
Out
they
of-
are
yeah.
not in gangs.
But did you ask them how did they get out of the hood?
They
Or-
decide their own decision.
They made it.
They did make a decision.
you
I
know-
actually have an interview with a guy, and he said his dad and mom are gangsters, but they didn't want the life for the kids. So it's like I made it out of the hood, but a lot of my friends didn't, and that's why they're dead. That's why they kill themselves. That's why they shoot each other,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So I talked to a lot of them. I did interviews with them, and he
that's
said
great.
you have to get out of there, otherwise you pick a wrong path. So there's one of my friend. He served military. He's a really good guy, very educated, and he's like, man, if I think like half of my friends from my childhood are dead because they are part of gangs. They choose that.
Yeah.
I didn't choose that. I choose education, university, work, and that's why I'm not there. And that's why he lives in my neighborhood now. He lives in Westwood,
Yeah.
and he's like, I don't even go to South Central to visit the grandmother.
But so how do you help those kids who don't?
That's why
You know,
I
are
don't
they-
know.
Those
you know?
guys are smarter, I guess.
I don't
or
know.
someone, you know, maybe you had maybe one of those kids had a teacher in first grade or second grade who said, "You're smart,
Don't do
and you
gangs,
can do
man."
it." And
What help-
the other three, no one paid attention to them. They hit
I had-
them. It's really I don't know. I'm just it's a huge problem, and it's
I have one close friend, and he told me exactly what changed him. He was a part of the gang, and he saw how his very close friend died because of the shooting. And he said, like, from that moment when he saw him like being like shot, he said like, I know I had to get out. I know I had to get out. So that was his thing. There must be some strong impact, either education or either like you see something crazy and you know that this is not what you want, and you are lucky enough that you are not the part of the drive-by or something like that. So that's why I know a lot of people from the poor areas, from the hoods. We are all together, we are all friends, we talk, and sometimes it's very interesting to hear their opinions and stuff like that.
well, I bet it is.
That's why I also like talk to you. I want to hear your opinion. But there's one thing that I really want to ask you now, and that is education.
Yeah.
If you can compare the education nowadays and education before, because I honestly think that the education sucks more and more. That they don't test people, like they don't test kids in front of the blackboard to be scared that they would be ashamed if they don't know the answer, and the kids would be laughing at them, that the tests are A, B, C, D, that they don't test them as much. They don't think math is as important as it was before, and those science, and instead of this they teach them politics science and this kind of stuff. Do you think that this is actually hurting the education system from teacher perspective, or do you think that the education is doing great or doing better than before? What do you think?
That's a huge question. My daughter could probably answer it.
That's
if
what I
ever-
mean, yeah.
You could ask her, I suppose. But I think that you've got young education, you've got middle school, you've got high school, you've got college, you've got private schools, you've got public schools. You get a huge thing. Do I think that it was more? I mean, I think that it was more strenuous, perhaps, when I was in school. I think they may have expected more, maybe, but I have no real understanding. I think the best schools in this country perhaps are still expecting, you know, they're good, but I also have heard from professors at Berkeley and other places where the kids they want A's or B's, and if you don't give it to them, they get upset about that. I also think in the way my daughter teaches, and she made a presentation about having little children when they're that little feeling good about and learning, and if they're upset about something, they can't learn. And to getting her whole thesis, her master's thesis, was about having children being able to resolve their conflicts with each other, and also to understand what they're feeling, to have a word for that, and to be able to change that mood and be proud of what they're doing. So she's not going, little ones like that. I probably did get yelled at in first grade and got intimidated and thought I couldn't do anything.
Now you couldn't do anything.
But maybe that's, for the little ones like that, maybe that's not a bad thing. It's to have them have first a sense of themselves and feel worthy and good that they can do something, because how many people have been made to feel so horrible about their not knowing something. I mean, there's all kinds of new theories about education now, but social justice education is a slightly different thing. And I don't know if the universities are easier now, if they're trying to make them easier, perhaps, but there's still some strenuous, more strict schools. But there are lots of different schools that don't think, they don't want to be as academic. They want you to be a well-rounded person, and I don't know. My feeling is probably things have gotten easier as opposed to harder, but I don't really know. I'm not teaching. I was teaching English as a second language, and it was a business school. I would be very strict and give them bad grades or do something, and they're like, wait a minute, they're here to see the culture and to see what it's like. But that's a private school.
You were giving them the culture. You were nailing them hard.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You'd have to talk to people who went to certain schools. My daughter might be able to be much better about answering.
Yeah, I was more asking, like, for example, like, since your daughter is a teacher, if she tells you, like, oh, mom, like, we have to do this and we didn't have to do it before, we have to teach nowadays this, and, you know,
well,
if she tells you something like that.
I think that she is an excellent teacher, and I think that whoever has her, those children will never forget her. I think that she thinks that certain methods has to, a certain way of teaching. She has, I mean, first grade you learn here, you learn how to read, you learned how to write, and you learn math. And so there's like the beginning of learning these basic skills. Whether the public schools have the right curriculum to do it, it's always like this. They teach reading like this, whole word, then they teach phonics, and then they do this, and then the math is this. The math that she's doing, I don't even know what it is. It's not like 2 + 2 is 4. What you memorize. It's some kind of other thing. Do I feel like people are better educated now?
Yeah, that's
no.
what I'm
No.
thinking. That's what I'm thinking.
No, they don't even read. Why? You've got, and it's not only, it's okay, the computer, the cell phone, all this stuff, the tweets, the Twitter, all these things, their attention span is like this. And no, I think, but I'm older now. Life is faster now. People, there are more cars. You asked about LA. It's a mess here now. Just look in the neighborhood. People don't have little houses like I have. They have huge houses, more traffic, and it takes longer to get somewhere, and everybody's in a hurry. And so they don't want to sit down and read 500-page book, Tolstoy, or Kundera, or Kafka. They want to read something quick.
They want to see a quick tweet. That's what it is.
But I am sorry about that, because I think that not, getting on a slower, I was hoping this COVID, some people are saying that it's slowed them down, but I don't know how long, because as soon as they take away, they're in the bars running around and dancing.
You say that you are not proud of being American.
No, I'm really not.
And
I'm not proud of our government. I'm not proud of, no.
Will you be proud that your grandchild is gonna be born in the United States?
Well, I'm an American. At the end of the day, I'm hoping that it can go back to the founding fathers, and what happened here is amazing. You have to say, it was amazing. And then the Civil War, and those are things that our history is to be proud of. And letting all the immigrants come, like my grandparents from Eastern Europe, the Irish, working hard and then being uneducated, but the next generation, their kids go to college or they have their own business. I mean, in the past, I was proud of it. I'm proud of the guys I am proud of those who march. I have a friend, the daughter, New York, every day. She was there. She was marching. She was in front of City Hall overnight. I wanted to go to law school because I said, Jackie, you're going to be a great lawyer. You've got a passion for social justice. You're smart. And so there are people I am proud of who are doing some things here. And maybe it will be better. I think if we have a different leadership, if we get back to what values were sacred that now seem to be just shoved away. And if I had a granddaughter or grandson, I would try to be a big influence. I do have a grandniece, and I love her, and they're trying to teach her to be a more responsible little girl, but she's only 2. I'm sure the Czechs think they can't believe what's going on.
Well, the Czechs are pretty confused about one thing. They think America is like a Czech Republic, but they don't understand that America is, there's a lot of states which have different opinions.
Totally different.
And different people living in there, different religions. Utah is completely different than the rest of the United States.
Yes, the Muslim,
and there is no such a thing like a situation in America is. It's always situation in certain state is.
You're right. It's very hard. It's very hard. That's why to talk about California, New York.
Yeah. Totally different opinions, but together they have like a lot of common. New York and
Because
California.
they're much more liberal and they're much more
and the rest of the
democratic,
state
and
is
the
completely
South,
different. Exactly.
And you've got Texas and Alabama and Georgia.
Exactly.
And those. But even in those states, you're starting to have some people who stand up, and thank God for them. But
So that's why people, for example, in Czech, they see a news and it says situation in America is, and then there is some certain fact. But that fact is only applicable in, let's say, one city or one state. I'm like, I am sure that if you ask someone in Missouri, they don't even know about this thing because it's not there. It's not their problem.
We're not. I mean, it is the United States of America, but it is very, and it's gotten worse. There was a time when we were one. I mean, when John F. Kennedy was shot and when his brother was shot, and certain things we pulled together, the wars, all of that. But it's with the current administration, it has been nothing but this, and getting worse and worse. And so that undercurrent of people who felt left out, who felt like they weren't appreciated, white lower class laborers who felt like they weren't being heard, and some farmers, and they weren't being heard. That's the problem. They had their concerns, but they were kind of relegated like this to the bigger cities and things. And Trump had a way of tapping into that anger and saying, we haven't forgot about you. And so, and all the prejudice, the people who wouldn't dare say something like that, but now they've got someone there saying it. It's a pity, and it's infuriating. It's disgusting. I could use a lot of adjectives.
Well, I'm glad you told me that.
Yeah, I told you that. But you are absolutely right. When someone says, what are Americans like? It's like, what are Americans like?
Exactly. That's like a question you never can answer. Like,
what age, what background, and certain groups. There's so many different groups.
You cannot use the word America and say and apply it for the entire continent on all those states and say that this is the fact everywhere, because it's so big. If you fly all over and you are looking at all those like little towns and then middle of nowhere there's nothing, you're like, this is also America.
It is, and until you like live in those places.
Yeah, I cannot even imagine that.
And I've lived in 5 or 6, 7 places in America, or even more, because I was in Ohio in school and Washington. But I think what you said is true, and it's also about some of the bigger cities. Los Angeles, as you said, there's central Los Angeles. This is the west side.
Yeah, completely different.
Yes, and we're more spoiled here, and people are more spoiled, and fewer masks, and they run in, and it's okay. It's like, oh yeah? And so it's also they're pockets. And this, Los Angeles is really a group of suburbs. It really is. It's not New Orleans or it's not a small town. It's not even New York. So.
And that's the way how it is right now.
Yes.
Well,
I want to say dziękuję. I really enjoyed this. I would really like to meet Czech people and be involved with the Czech.
I'm gonna hook you
concert
up with some of them. Yeah.
Because
sure.
I know there's a film festival, and I did go to that, but I
was
didn't
there
do much
too,
of it.
and I don't remember.
Well,
you.
I only went to the. I only found out at the end. Went to the last one.
Yeah, me too.
And I heard all the Czech, and I could hear one word like "pojď sem," or I could hear a few words that I realized I knew. But I'd like to know a little bit more Czech, and I'd be very happy to teach. I have a degree, and
Yeah.
I also teach English as a second language, so
Guys,
it would be fun for me.
If you're gonna be in LA for vacation and you would like to meet someone,
In the backyard, I help with your English. And
that's your
thank you.
teacher right here.
All right, or anybody here who wants to improve his or her English. I'm
Yeah,
happy
exactly.
to.
All right, thank you so much for taking your
It's
time
my
doing
pleasure.
that.
My
I like to talk to
pleasure,
you,
very much.
and as I said, like I want you to express all your feelings, all those opinions,
did.
all those everything
Oh,
that,
dear.
all that you want to say. And I hope you guys learned today something, and you hear something new that you may not even hear from someone I ever interviewed. And thank you one more time.
Nashledanou.
Nashledanou. That's it for today's video. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.